Got it.
Okay, you heard that. So we are recording, and I'm Jim Porter, and this is the channel that I made up called Skeptical Spectrum on YouTube. And this is my brother, I have to admit. So we have the same last name. Go ahead and tell him anything about you.
I'm Joe Porter, and I'm a musician.
Yes, you are. And I'm not.
Right. Yes.
What else about you? You study a lot of, you've read a lot of philosophy books.
I've read a decent amount. Yeah.
So
There's still a stack left.
oh,
At 50, it looks like a long haul, but maybe I can just get the cliff notes.
yeah. Maybe we should wait and make a video after you do that. All right,
Yeah.
everybody. No, but I out of the blue came up with utilitarianism yesterday while the other day when we were talking about whether or not we are going to video together, and you know a little bit about utilitarianism, but everybody knows a little bit about what they think they know about morality, right?
Yeah.
And I don't even know if you are an agnostic, a religious believer, or an atheist.
Right. That's a good question.
That's a good question, isn't it?
I
If
don't
I
know
were to
that.
frame it as a question, Your Honor.
Yeah. Because the way we grew up, by the time I was 3 years old, I probably had a model of a single God, you know,
Yes. Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'd have to undergo a massive amount of change to get rid of that.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
really,
Absolutely.
but I can't. I'm gonna have to go with Hume on that. I can't. I can only have faith in God if I do. I can't really believe in God by his definition of belief.
Does faith mean that he will act as if there's a God, but he's not sure that there is one because he doesn't have evidence or something like that?
Well, even more to his point, I think was faith. You have faith that the sun will rise every day.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't really believe it if it hasn't happened. You know.
That's okay, good. I'm on that. That's like skepticism. That's like agnosticism. That's like just the idea that there is such a bunch of things that we call faith, but they're based on previous experience. They may not
Right.
happen tomorrow, but they have happened so far.
Right.
So yeah, I do believe that's a kind of faith that I believe in. When you talk on the hard, like when you talk to a bunch of people on like you on chat sites and stuff about it, some people will get really strict and all that stuff.
Right.
Yeah, I tell people that if they want to have faith, think of it like confidence or reasonable expectations.
Yeah.
And because you can't, like, I think it was James Baldwin that said in a book, because I think it was him, because I read him once in my life and it was a long time ago in a class. And I swear he said something like, just to build a building, you have to maintain some working assumptions, you know.
Yeah.
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 So you're gonna say this is not the day the bricks are gonna float away, or
Right. Yeah. Or the planet's gonna stop spinning or something.
yeah,
Anything. Like that. Yeah.
yeah. So I still have to go to work.
Yeah.
I usually
Right.
put a timer on for these to keep us disciplined, just
Okay.
to let us know. And it's either 30, 45 minutes or an hour. I think about putting it. 45 minutes, okay?
I like 30 a little better.
30. Let me do that.
If it gets to 30 and we're into something,
Maybe we'll finish it up. We'll take a little time to finish it down. Right?
yeah, yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So anyway, so this stuff does play into atheism and deism and theism and specific belief systems, because people, if we're talking about morality, we may never get to morality, but if we into today, but if we're talking about morality, you might have to ask people about free will. And what are your thoughts on free will?
Uh, I don't actually have too many thoughts on free will day to day or
Ah,
interesting, but I did have. Uh, I don't know if I'm just. I can't be a determinist because that makes no sense. You know,
it makes no sense how.
to be like some kind of determinist, whatever,
Right.
however like everything is laid out and your choices are going to be your choices. But now that you mention it, I do believe in free will as much as I know about how the world works and
Okay,
how
that's cool.
others work. You always have a choice ahead of you, and you have it.
There are lots of thoughts on that, and I actually believe no one has the answer. Um,
It's a hard one, yeah.
there's a place where people say, well, if everything is like just the physical laws in the earlier sense, like a bit like a billiard board before quantum stuff came around, and even maybe before that Einstein guy came around, but especially the quantum stuff. Beforehand, the idea was if there was a dude whose brain was amazing enough that he could calculate, you know, all the data, all the physical forces, and all the particles in the universe and all the universes that exist. He could tell you what's going to happen anytime, anywhere, any place, in the
Oh,
future, in the past, and that where you know what I mean. He can, meaning that that's kind of an explanation of determinism. I think they usually have it as a demon, but I think nowadays saying a demon, you might as well just say a magic person. You know,
right.
it's just a thought experiment. That would be like an explanation of determinism. It just happens because cause effect, cause effect, cause effect, and the laws of it. There's another one that loosens it up by saying there's quantum theory, and that even there's no way to know where certain particles are going to be when and where to enough accuracy that you know because like a small deviation in what a particle does would you know like if a particle is going to hit something at this angle like that
Yeah,
you know it's going to go that way, right? But if it just goes like that a little bit, you know that it's going to start going that way, and that's going to make a huge difference by the time. So the idea of quantum theory is that at the quantum level, unpredictable stuff can happen. So we cannot predict everybody's future behaviors accurately. However, someone comes back and says, that's still not meaning that the person chose
right.
because it was still the marbles going in random directions this time, as opposed to pretty.
Yeah.
So anyway, but there's another idea that, and I'll ask you about this. Does it require a soul or something like a soul for you to be able to make decisions and ones that, you know, I know my options and I'm using my will to choose a new decision?
Yeah. The only I can only assume all that stuff is built on what you've learned in your development physiologically throughout your life, really.
The actual what you decide to decide.
Yeah, and it kind of comes from when I was thinking about driving around with our father one day when I was a little kid
Mm-hmm.
and going like, well, who the heck wants to go to work 5 days a week and not be able to play with your toys? And I thought I carried that with me my whole life, but in the I may not even have thought exactly that the way I thought, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My thinking evolved and what I was changed so much.
Yeah.
And that kind of led me to believe, well, how could there be this permanent soul structure that is yourself that lasts your whole life? I think it more evolves.
Oh, yeah. That's not where I thought you were going with it. But that's right. Does a soul that is sort of independent of flesh and experience
Right.
exist?
Yeah.
Or does a soul not exist and you change? Or does a soul exist and it's dependent on flesh and experience?
Right.
Something like that. Yeah, that's very cool. And I bet you there are people who believe in that third one that I just listed, the one that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting that we definitely, you know, there's this old like half joke that people start out, they're born liberal, but they wind up conservative when they're old, you know, that kind of
Yeah.
thing,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know. But anyway, that's one of those things that suggests that we change over time. So one of the things about free will and morality is can we hold someone accountable? Um, there's another question. If the answer is yes, should we? What does that do? Um,
Right.
so anyway, um, yeah, so that brings up moral code, but it also brings up legal code and penal code and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I said penal.
He said,
Um,
gonna pause over that.
um,
That's
so
a it kind of goes back to when people uh pray for what seems to me to be kind of nonsensical things, you know. it seems the word of the Bible would have been almost pretty much deterministic, you know.
Oh, okay. Could you tell me what you mean? Like illustrate that or elaborate, or what do you mean?
Well, if it got this God knows everything that's going to happen, everything that happened. Is there is if you were God, the way we learned it, or is
Oh, oh,
off, are you going to go, well, here's this little baby. Too bad he's going to be a murderer, you know,
oh,
an,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
bad he's an unrepentant murderer kind of thing with that.
So yeah, so well, are you saying so he makes him an unrepentant murderer? Uh,
No, he maybe well, even before he was born, it was well. It's too bad this person in a billion years from now is going to be an unrepentant murderer. You know.
oh, that almost sounds like if God knows everything, how could anything change? Therefore, how could anybody have free will? Type
Yeah,
argument I've heard.
right. Exactly. Yeah.
That's an interesting one because then he would be wrong or fallible. My thought is if I was God, I would just pull the I can change what I know because I make all the rules.
Yeah. Good.
That's not logical what you just said because I'm God,
Yeah.
you know, um, or something like that. But yeah, yeah, that's an interesting one too. That one always baffles me. But I wrote it down yesterday. He set the ball rolling in an argument with somebody on Facebook. He set the ball rolling and knew what would happen if he set the ball
Oh, right. Like that would be that there's stuff around this place.
rolling. There's stuff around what?
There's this stuff around in this universe where you could roll a ball. That would be called the universe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's other stuff there too where you can roll a ball if you're God.
Yeah, I mean, right. If okay, well, I'll use a bowling analogy since roll the ball. If I was God and I wanted to get a strike, and I
Yeah.
knew all the things I had to do to get a strike this time, given which way the wind was blowing. Well, anyway, this okay. Anyway, I would just twist my hand a little bit and do exactly that thing
Yeah.
uh, because I'd know. And so therefore, when God did whatever the first thing God did, according to whatever religion, so depending on there are two parts of Genesis that explain creation a little differently. If he
Right.
said, "Let there be light," and all this came from it, including evil stuff and babies dying, and you know, the worm boring into their eyeball because there's such a thing that happens like that. You know what I mean? Terrible things happen. Couldn't
Yeah.
God have said like, "Let there be light," and then it would have been a perfect world? Why didn't He do
Right.
that? So that
Right.
so are we responsible for our breaking the rules and all that stuff?
Right.
Is a very good question. Um, I don't like to have a definitive answer on it sometimes because I've realized that if you're talking to someone religious, they can give you a lot of answers and that you'll both get into something like this person should understand what I'm saying and what I'm saying makes sense. Um,
Yeah.
but if both people think that, then maybe there's a different kind of sense. I still like arguing it up to the point that I can. I currently don't. Let me think. I think I've switched on free will. I think that my new thought is even if there is free will or not. Now, okay, if there is free will, what really works to help people not do bad behaviors anymore and to do better behaviors in the world? That's not a question, that's a rhetorical question.
Right.
That's the question. And if free will doesn't exist, then to ask what we should do is actually um, what do you call it? Not a paradox. It's completely a false question. It's not even a question. What we should do because we don't have control over what.
Right.
It's an absurd question. It's considered an absurd question, or there's another word for it, paradoxical question, something like that. Because if we don't have free will, we can't choose what to do about bad behaviors. We're just going to do what we do. However, there's something called compatibilism that says, but we really feel like we have free will.
Yeah.
So let's figure out what we're going to do because we can't help but at least pretend that we have free will. It's
Right.
impossible not to. Yeah. So, um, so going toward that, I mean, do you have any ideas on what is the promotion of a better, like, okay, I'm going to broaden it to like, I'm going to say a word like society, but I still mean morals and how people behave. Are
Right.
there things you critique about different societies or our society that you don't necessarily think about brings about a more moral community?
No, you put it that way, not really.
Okay.
Say on the oh, I'm gonna go back to the subject of the soul, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Good.
It goes back to the only definition I could. This might be the capper or not.
All right.
Uh, the soul, the best definition I've heard of it is something that's with you for forever, your entire life. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I just can't think of anything that would have been that way that doesn't evolve like the rest of the body, which I could only assume would be from your brain, your
Yeah.
conscious.
Well,
So,
yeah. And I think a lot of people have a sense, and maybe it's not a lot of people, maybe it's almost everybody, has a sense of I'm still Jim, I'm still Joe.
right, yeah,
And it seems that we can have that and be capable of having this idea that I'm really a different person than I used to be.
yes,
As if we can recognize the change and growth and still think of ourselves as the same thing. Probably even people that don't believe in that any physical thing that has not changed or any soul that has not changed. I think,
yeah,
I mean, I do. I personally do. I say I've changed a lot, and then I say I'm still Jim. I'm still good old Jim, or whatever.
right,
So that's interesting. What what would that mean? What's the difference between a person who develops and that person still being the same person?
right.
What do
Yeah, I
you
think
think?
the collection of memories and convincing yourself you're the same person because you've only had this one perspective of five senses
Mm-hmm.
life, and it seems like,
Right. And
but
there
at
has
the time when you think about being a child, at least when I do, you think about it with an adult brain.
say
So
that again. Say that again.
when
Sorry.
you think about your childhood and you have these solid memories that are real, I'm not saying they weren't real. You're thinking about it with an adult brain, trying to,
Mm-hmm.
and you
Yep.
always say things. I remember when I was a kid, I thought this, and I remember when I was a kid, I that might not be true unless you record it.
Right. Exactly. Memories are very um, what do you call it? Unreliable. And let's just say that brings up another thing too, because I did that when I was 3 or 4 or 5.
Uh-huh.
Um, and at the same time, you're like very aware that you're far separated from whoever that 5-year-old was.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
It's like
interesting. Yeah.
you could think of it as a different person, even though it's not. So, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if this soul thing, which my favorite, that's with you your whole life. Well, I'll take that back because nobody ever tried to convince me that it lasts forever. So I'll take
The
I'm
soul or the soul while you're alive.
the soul through eternity after I'm alive and all that stuff.
They
That's
didn't
the
they didn't tell you in Catholic Church that it was a permanent thing.
they did actually, yes,
Oh, okay, okay.
but
I
I can't even speak to that because that's the whole thing.
um,
Even if I die in the last 100 years, I could be like, oh, you see, it's not forever.
this last like 3 or 4 minutes has been as much about identity as anything. And so, I'm without me saying mine, I'm going to ask you yours. What's the tie-in between having an identity and morality?
Oh, I don't know. I never thought about that at all. The tie-in, my first thought would be from whom, how you individualize yourself as opposed to those around you and how they influenced you. Because I think,
Okay.
I don't, I think your growth comes a lot from your influences and external, from your senses. So
Right. Yeah.
it only those people around you, even the people who handed you your first Bible, and then you went on your own way trying to figure it out from there, kind of thing.
There was an influence.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to figure out what I think about the Bible because Fred gave me a Bible. I would have never thought about it. Started
Right.
thinking about it so soon if Fred hadn't given me that Bible. And now I could go in a lot of different directions, but it's from that point in time where I received the Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's why a lot of people like that are atheists, they'll say, well, if you want to become an atheist, just read the Bible a lot. Ha, ha, ha. But then, of course, a lot of people who are Christians say, if you want to be a Christian, stay with that Bible. Stay with that Bible all day long.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And you said morality. Oh, I see. I see. So it has to do more with development, I think, the way you're describing it.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's not necessarily a philosophical point about I am the person who creates the bad behavior.
Right.
It's more of there's this real or arbitrary distinction between us and our environment,
Yep.
and we're affected by it. Does that inform what we a well, does that inform the concept of deservingness or anything like that? Like whether you deserve punishment and reward, whether you are a good person or bad person?
I
Um,
think I that changes too. That's flexible. I'm not saying there are no moral absolutes.
mhm.
But there are always gray areas. Like we can agree, it's not good just to kill somebody, but it's okay to do it in self defense.
Mhm, mhm.
And you could argue that, but most people would say no. Self defense is a perfectly good reason to kill somebody, even if they say maybe accidentally. All you need to do is disarm the situation. You don't have to kill somebody. But if disarming the situation ends up killing somebody, then you're in the right.
Aha, uh-huh.
So
That brings up the whole political cable news
oh yeah,
Twitterverse stuff for me because
and
concepts
Sunset
like
Point Road
what's that?
and Sunset Point Road.
Ooh, what happened on Sunset Point Road?
That fella shot the guy in the parking lot while he was crawling away from him, who was convicted of murder, by the way.
The guy that shot him was right. This
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
okay. I thought he shot a convicted murderer. No, okay. What was the what were the was there a controversy around that? Oh yeah, was there a controversy around that?
There was, because it was one of the earlier stand your ground law cases, but they had it on camera, and everybody in the world could see the person he shot clearly crawling away from him.
Oh, whoa. Was that before or after Trayvon?
After.
Oh, wow. Okay, so here's the thing. If a person, okay, so then earlier I mentioned deservingness versus effectiveness of behavioral change. Do you
Uh-huh.
think they go together or do you think they compete?
I don't know what if I ever heard of deservingness. Explain that a little more. It seems kind of
That
obvious.
means if you shot a guy in a way that's not legal, you deserve to go to prison. That's the deservingness. The other one is if you shot a guy while in a way that was illegal and we send you to prison, that's going to change your behavior.
Right.
So we use deservingness for both in our current society, but if you were really asking the question, is this going to change your behavior? This you don't have to mention deserve. You could
Right.
say, you're a great guy, but you literally have this problem where you might shoot somebody who's crawling away from you.
Right.
And we don't want you to do that again. And we know because of research that sending you to prison for 5.78 years is going to get you just to that point where you won't do that anymore. But you'll
Right.
still be willing to defend yourself and your family and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. So I make that distinction.
Yeah.
Because when I walk into the counseling office, and I'm the counselor, um, people are there for change, whether somebody else sent them there or whether they sent themselves there.
Yeah.
And they can do and say all kinds of things in my office, but whatever change they want, I'm trying to figure out how to get that happen, you know. So and what really made this, I was already just like some kind of a hardcore brainwashed liberal as a kid, and I still am. Except my brain's not as clean as it used to be, but I'm still a liberal. I always kind of doubted um, whether putting people in prison and executing them was going to overall create more safety for the community. Let's say the United States of America or the world
Right.
community. So I always had a doubt about that. So this is one of those distinctions that I make. And then when I became a therapist, I was like, wait a minute. Therapy is one place people go to change, to grow, to change, to heal. But the word change is used a lot. And so that's, and you know, there are of course like psychological theories of behavior change and, you know, that kind of thing. So, for example, let's say you could train someone to be a really good person. I used this one on my friend the other day. I told you about this on the phone, I think. Let's say this person has been a serial killer for years, and they finally nabbed him. They know he's done like 30 of them, but somebody invents a gummy bear that if you give it to him, he is guaranteed to never kill another person again. And in fact, he's guaranteed to be motivated um, to repair as much damage as he's possibly could on the planet for the rest of his life. Would you just let him go free?
Right.
I don't know. I don't know what you think of that question.
I think if you could totally prove that that would never happen, you could let him go free.
Yeah.
Or but yeah, I don't see why not. That would take a lot of research, and your research could backfire on you.
And there's this thing called restorative justice where people make restitution to any survivors through negotiation. That doesn't happen in most places. It's more likely to happen, like I think it was originated to some degree, or at least the modern popular version of it was originated on the African continent somewhere,
Yeah.
based on old
Prehistoric.
yeah,
Really.
yeah,
Wow.
and yeah, and now you know people are trying to use it. Okay, so morality. Do you know what, like, you know what utilitarianism is, right?
Yeah, and I was the documents I read the first time. Well, I read it in just I heard about it in a little class in college. You know, that did an overview of philosophies.
Mm-hmm.
It was an ethics class, and then I was reading the Federalist Papers
Mm,
and the introduction, so to speak.
yeah.
Mentioned this document is for the utility of the people, and I
Ooh.
was, oh wow, something I heard in school. Cool. Thought
Yeah.
about it. And that's the one document. And the only other one I could say would be the Constitution, because it's supposedly a utilitarian document.
Yeah, because I think the Federalist Papers was part of the argument or something to create
Yeah,
the
yeah. The
Constitution.
Federalist Papers were three of the guys, like Alexander Hamilton and John Jay and one other, who wrote them in an argument for the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
When,
And then there were the Anti-Federalists.
yeah, who
Right, right.
and George Clinton, by the way, which is hilarious.
I love that. I love it a lot.
Yeah,
Um,
uh, very funky,
yeah.
fun, very funky anti-federalist.
You're getting
Uh,
carried away with the funk, Joe.
I, yeah,
You're
that's
going,
why.
you're going way out.
That's why I went anti-federalist.
I don't want the P funk. I do
Yes.
not. I do not. That's funny because they were called Parliament. Oh my
Oh,
God.
that's right. Whoa, holy
This
crap.
is going to freak me out. It just did
Yeah.
freak me out. I'm
The
past being, huh?
last time I set my eyes upon George Clinton in real life, like everything around me smelled like marijuana. And I was outdoors. It was outdoors. And I was like 50 feet away from the band or something like that.
Is it coming
Wow.
from the band or everybody else too?
I think it was coming from their travel vans that I was standing right next to at the time.
Wow, is he still alive? He passed.
Yeah, yes, he is.
He's
Yeah.
still alive. Oh, well, I hope he didn't watch this video. I hope somebody watches this video besides me.
So
So here we
that's
are.
where my that's where my idea of utilitarianism comes from. But
Okay.
it's kind of like, and this may,
Just for anybody that does watch this, utilitarianism is the idea that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. And the job of, depending who's talking, the job of morality basically is what is best for the most people. And then that brings up all kinds of dilemmas like, would you chop off a baby's foot if feeding that to 9 dying genius brain surgeons would be cured of their deadly disease, you know?
right.
That's the kind of the one example is like there's a guy who is healthy, but he came to
Uh-huh.
the doctor and they were doing a brain, they did a scan on him that required him to be anesthetized and asleep. And then the doctor who's doing the scan on the guy, you know, some kind of body scan, some kind of diagnostic scan that has him
Mhm.
be on anesthesia. Next, in the next room over, there are 5 Nobel laureates of different disciplines who each need a particular organ to survive. Would it
Yeah.
be okay to just take that guy's organs and let him die and give them to the other guys? Would it be better if you asked him first? All this kind of stuff,
Yeah. Right.
because that's the utilitarian sort of dilemma that people
Yeah.
throw out.
Yeah. The that all the kind of gets into these guys will definitely do good in the world. You don't know if you give them
Right, right,
these
right.
foot, they might just be like, well, if it were that easy, I'm just going to become a lazy slob or
It's
whatever.
like, yeah, or like I know how to get a Nobel Prize. There's a trick to it, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
you gotta
Yeah.
like I was gonna do. I almost cured cancer, but I knew that this panel was really into this other thing, you
Yeah.
know. So I figured
Yeah.
out how to make you know, I don't know, Gatorade taste good or something.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
just yesterday I was thinking how badly I needed a baby's foot. To,
yeah, that's the thing. And in our society, you can't just get one. You can't just get a baby's.
yeah. No. No. You
That's the
know
way
how
our
hard,
society. What's that?
especially during the pandemic. Ooh.
Oh gosh, it was insane. And if you could find one, good luck
Oh yeah.
paying for it.
$500 my friend spent for one.
That's what I'm talking about. That's that's where the moral injury is.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh,
about oh yeah,
on so on the top of my head, I would say I wouldn't do it because babies are so cute, and you don't know if those people are what they're gonna do. They could all just become alcoholics the next day and be completely useless to everybody.
exactly. And yeah, there are a lot of assumptions that you can't make. And then
Yeah.
there's a fairness assumption of so there's this distinction some philosophers made between is and ought. We really hate that idea of allowing this healthy guy to die. It bothers us, you know.
Yeah.
That's an is, and that's also there's 2 fallacies. They'll say that's from an is to an ought. If it feels like it's wrong, then it must be wrong. But it's also called argument from, I think, like emotion, which means like if somebody says if there was no God, then life would be meaningless, so we have to believe in a God. But the answer to that is no, we're trying to argue logically here. It doesn't mean there has to be a God. It means, damn it, it would suck if there wasn't, you know.
Yeah.
But then the other argument would be no, it would be exactly the same if there was no God, because we've been living in this world as it is. But the point I'm making is you're we okay. So Jeremy Bentham is a philosopher who threw he was I don't think he was the first one, but he threw emotion right into it, and he
Mhm.
said um, pleasure is a bad word for most people, so I'll say happiness, you know. But then he would repeatedly use the word pleasure because he wanted people to get used to it. But pleasure and happiness is probably 1/2 of the equation, and then the logic of benefiting people, whatever benefit means, because that has to be worked out, and then benefiting the most people. If you put the emotional, okay, so that would be the other half, but if you put the emotional part into it, then I think Jeremy Bentham says it retains some of the dilemma because we do not find pleasure in killing some healthy guy to save five other guys. And
Right. Yeah.
yeah, and it's not just some people, most people find that very irking. And so
Mm,
my take on hedonic utilitarianism is the feelings matter. If we ignore the feelings, we're going to get in a lot of arguments. We're going to have 1,000 second thoughts. Um, and it's going to be more complex if we think everything can be easily calculated in terms of maximum benefit for the largest amount of people.
right.
Because a lot of us in the West are really don't feel as good because we know there are people suffering in our country and in other
Right.
countries around the world, and not just in the West. I mean, so that's the thing. I think that's one of my thoughts on it is we have to think about maximizing pleasure in ways that aren't going to have side effects 10 minutes later. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So that's kind of a snapshot of where I think Jeremy Bentham is with that. He's dead. He had himself embalmed,
Oh,
and
really?
yep, he had himself embalmed. And at his what little museum, you can go look at him embalmed. Except I
Wow.
think recently they took him on a tour for his head because they couldn't keep his head on and embalmed.
Wow.
So they have his head usually under the chair that his body is sitting on.
Wow.
I'm glad we got to this point where we're talking about this part.
Yeah.
So
Well,
anyway, but where did this
so
all? Yeah,
like for instance, I don't know if anybody was like when I was killing bona fide Nazis who,
right,
even if they say, I know for a fact, I just
right,
watched a concentration camp beating innocent children and elderly
right.
people. They're not going to say it felt great. I don't think, you
That's
know.
what I think too. And have you heard the term moral injury?
No.
That's becoming talked about a lot in relation to PTSD. When a guy comes back that we all, so to speak, our nation as a whole sent over there, and you are trying to apprehend or stop bad guys, so to speak,
Yeah.
um, somehow you're not really going to feel that good about everything you did over
Right.
there.
Yeah.
And it's because you're human.
Yeah.
And if we acknowledge that, then that tells us there's still some moral puzzles to solve. And I don't mean for society, I mean for that guy or that woman that, oh my gosh, there's more to do now that this person is back. They've done their duty. Even if they didn't do anything that would be considered out of line, but they killed a few people,
Yeah.
people come back with some consciousness, making their necks tense about that, you
Yeah.
know. And so we need to, that's why I believe in sort of saying it out loud so they know that it's not because there's something disgusting about it.
Right. Yeah.
So if we start to consider emotional reactions, whether they make the kind of sense we make when we're filling out a calendar or making an agenda or doing a chemical formula or doing an algebra formula, if we realize that the emotions make a different kind of sense than that, then we'll start to consider more about what you might call ameliorating suffering
Hmm.
and increasing joy, happiness, pleasure.
Right.
You know, so,
I always
yeah.
thought,
What's that?
I always thought my idea of moral evolution comes from basically uh, what humans had seen as just bad for them. You know,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
this won't work if you don't have a type of family unit that promotes uh, a type of society that can produce your needs to live. You know, if that's not the structure of the family unit that fans out further, then that's a wrong kind of thing.
mm-hmm,
That becomes immoral. You know, it
mm-hmm.
becomes that is immoral because it's bad for the. I think really that's the closest I can kind of think of how morals must have evolved in human beings.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I would call that like constructed selection, or not, you know, how you select in a trait. That's like social selection or social construction or something,
Yeah,
possibly. But also it's probably got some genetic selection in there. So, you know, because like you said, it has to work. Work
yeah,
for what? Well, for survival. Survival meaning what? The survival of certain traits, the survival of certain genes, the survival of certain memes in a society. Because a meme used to mean like a packet of information, I think. I
yeah,
think the meme used to mean that. So survival of information in a community would probably be selected by how well it worked for that community.
yeah,
And so yeah, having men and women get together um, back when we probably would do well to have a lot of farm hands or a lot of people to hunt and gather, um, would have been selected into a community. Let's keep
yeah.
having babies,
Right.
you know, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Even this is a weird. I don't know why this always comes into my head, but you know the Jewish practice of separating women during menstruation.
Yeah.
It's it seems kind of archaic to us, even though it's practiced a lot. Um, something as simple as back in their time, they were just afraid of blood because of all the bad things that people happen through bloodborne
Oh,
disease. You
yes.
know,
Yes.
they figured out, oh, this guy ate that goat's blood. He's
Yes.
sick now. And then they just
Yeah.
started associating with that. So,
Yeah.
as abhorrent as we might think it is, I'm not saying let's all do that, you know.
No,
Um,
no.
although I had a girlfriend be like, that'd be great.
She got to go on a vacation or whatever.
Yeah, 7 days of hanging out with the girls wherever, you know, not work. But I think, oh, that's more of a I'm not gonna say YouTube, but it's more of a pragmatic origin, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Yeah.
And maybe the time, who knows, during the time when the Old Testaments were, you know, either recorded or that something similar happened that somebody recorded, there
Mm-hmm.
may have been trouble with bloodborne illness, so they were like, well,
Yes. Right. Right.
so
And you know, in fact, there are things that are not conscious that make us um, that we do anyway. We act on anyway. Like for example, let's say maybe they didn't consciously say when blood happens, disease will happen, but their memory in the back of their mind is going through all those times they really felt gross and sick, you know, when there was blood around. It'll
yeah,
pop up almost like a phobia. And then you
right,
say, well, we got to make a rule against this blood thing happening all the freaking time. If it's not this
yeah.
one, that one, and so they say, no, let them go out of town. And but right, so it could be conscious or unconscious.
Or I don't even need to use that example. I could use the example of uh, their methods of bleeding the animals. You know,
Right, right.
uh,
They had very
eat,
strict, important. Yeah, that's right. So there's plenty of blood um, cleansing from blood going on in those two stories.
yeah,
Now what are you doing?
just going inside to get another stupid smoke.
This is the point where Joe takes us into the restroom with him.
Yep. You
Um, so
need music. You need the we'll be right back. Johnny Carson with a guy on the toilet, a silly guy on the toilet.
yeah, if I was clever enough with this Zoom, I could like mute your camera or something and go. "Doo, doo, 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 doo." Okay, so and nobody would understand it who was born after us.
Did
Um,
I? Oh, by the way, didn't a meme start as something that was kind of like the zeitgeist uh,
yeah,
thing,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
I
now
believe
it's just
so.
a picture of anything?
Memes is like a picture where you throw a dumb saying on it now, but
Yeah, yeah,
it used to be something like a packet of information um, that had the power to had or did not have the power to grow in the minds of the population, to be
right.
proliferated in a population. So I think that's the way I understand it. So yeah, I so far I've gone into hedonic um,
You took
hedonic utilitarianism. Yeah, because my thought is if there is no absolute right or wrong, but trying to make everybody generally feel all the way better is 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 possible. Meaning basically alleviating suffering and maximizing happiness.
Right.
That
Yeah.
I think most people could eventually go along with that, but the problem is I don't want to sit here and be an apologist for atheism or agnosticism,
Right.
because what you might have to say is, well, therefore there's no God that passed us down the only morality,
Right.
or the absolutely correct morality, or there's a God, but God built us to go ahead and figure this out for ourselves, or something in between, or something.
Right. Yeah.
So, um, if you read, if I don't know, so wait, we talked about identity, morality. Um, are there ethical standards for performers?
I don't know if while they're performing, except for conforming to the laws of a particular.
Wherever you're performing?
Well, there are, yeah, for performers, there are, but it's mostly the ones I can think of are like who you call for the job and stuff like that, you know.
So it's like understood rules of the trade that show respect, make sense,
Yeah, yeah,
decrease confusion. Um,
yeah. There has to be because I can almost think of a like one that would be, oh, that is purely unethical kind of thing. Uh, except for just ripping off people's music and pretending it's your own.
true,
That's
true,
that's immoral and unethical.
and
Yeah,
illegal, and well, the version of illegal, you can get sued for that.
yeah, yeah.
Um, that brings up for me the idea of like, does it have, are there work? Is it, do you guys also have to be conscious of workplace standards? Like, we can't be doing all kinds of misogynistic discrimination and all that stuff.
Yes, absolutely. You have
Yeah.
to go. Uh, and I guess that could change by the crowd, but I've never really seen that happen too often. You know,
Yeah, that brings
everybody
up,
kind of acts the same from one crowd to another, unless there's like you happen to be where, oh, these are my people, you know, so I'm gonna almost subconsciously or unconsciously change how I'm doing the
yeah,
performance because these
yeah,
are my
yeah. That goes to my Jim Porter's role theory, and that is everybody's always worried about being an imposter, but we really are playing roles everywhere we go. And like you said, I'm unconsciously adjusting the pattern of behavior.
right,
And somebody who sees me on my 70th birthday party, no, that's a bad example. I don't know. Somebody who sees me in one environment might be surprised by the way they when they
yeah.
see me in another
Out of
environment.
work when somebody, oh, you're out of work, you're a real loose, fun dude, or when they say that, you know.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that brings up for me, do you work with other kinds of entertainers like comedians? And if so, do do they get to break all kinds of rules? Or do you get to break all kinds of rules? Like, can you be politically incorrect, as they call it, wherever
Right.
you go or in certain places? Whatever
Uh,
politically incorrect work, because you, is it okay if I mention one of the places you work? Not the name of it, but just the fact.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Besides various venues, restaurants, like places with stages, you also do work for a church.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the distinction I was thinking. I imagine
Right.
there, you automatically do what you needed to do for their worship function,
Yep.
and that's
And a long time ago, even before the new guy was there, they asked the musicians what their belief was. I was like,
ah,
well, I'm growing up believing in God, but I don't practice religion anymore, you know.
okay, okay.
So I'm as good as, you know, they kind of consider me as I'm certainly not Baptist. And they do treat us differently. Yeah. A
Okay.
little, you know, they don't ask us readings or anything like that, you know.
They don't ask what?
They don't ask us to do any readings.
Oh, 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 right, right.
Yeah.
Brother Joe or whatever is not going to come up and
Right. Yeah.
do that kind
Yeah.
of thing.
It's interesting how well it works out though, because I mean, the people that play music that are the hired people, they're from downright atheistic to the other end of the spectrum, and I've never seen it, you know,
And I guess
mess.
people do, now that I think of it, you probably tailor things to an audience. And sometimes the audience is dictated by what's been advertised too. So if you advertise a raunchy blues blowout,
Right.
then you'll be fine. I mean, you may not. Do you raunch out on the double bass?
You could, yes.
You could. I couldn't, but some people.
People could, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And then okay, that's true, and it just sounds dirty. Just
Yeah.
sounds dirty when you play.
Nasty.
Dirty, nasty. Wasn't there
Yeah.
a dirty, dirty Atlanta? Wasn't there some CeeLo Green and all that stuff? I think they called it
Yes.
dirty.
Oh,
Dirty
I
what?
don't remember that bit. I just remember the I remember when. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that guy's voice. All right, so I think that's all the stuff I could squeeze out of you, and it is almost 2 o'clock. So we spoke from about 1 o'clock to about 2 o'clock.
Yeah, that wasn't so bad.
All right,
And
what
my
would you
jaw just
do? The final question, I guess, what would you do if someone asked you to, what were you at? You're sitting on a panel where you're trying to make laws and rules for some organization that had 30 people in it, and you and 5 people were going to make, and they said, how does a person know what's right and wrong? What if you had to give some kind of temporary answer, what would you say?
oh, um I would say I think in this answer might be opposite to what I think, but um first of all, don't cut the baby's foot, you know?
Start with,
What?
start
Start
with,
with that.
yeah,
Yeah. Start with don't cut off the baby's foot. It's a baby. You know?
exactly.
Why do you have such a good world if you're gonna be running around cutting off babies' feet?
It's a baby, therefore, don't
Yeah.
cut off its foot.
No. That's just awful.
So
You
that's number
guys are
one.
so arrogant. You think you're gonna come up with the whole world saving thing. You haven't done it yet, and now you're sitting.
What makes you think that the baby foot idea is gonna?
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I know you guys thought about this 5 days ago, and I don't think that
Well,
5 days
yeah.
is enough
Well,
time.
we're all ABD. Did we mention that? So we still have a little learning to do, but still, um,
What's ABD?
I think that all but doctorate.
Oh, we're all ABDs, like when you don't do your dissertation. Yeah, all but dissertation.
We can start a little more. We can learn a little more.
Yeah,
But so that would be a non-utilitarian approach.
right. It's the baby.
Which,
Don't do that.
yeah, because what kind of world will we be where just people who say or deemed smartest can just go around cutting off people's limbs?
Right. We'd be in Hitler world.
Yes, exactly. Um, so what was your question before that? I can't remember.
Oh, yeah. What would be the guideline you'd hope they would use?
I would still hope they would use utilitarianism, I think,
Something along
because
the
it
lines.
makes most sense. Yeah, but you could extend it though. That could somebody could say because these people from this particular place are foul, nasty creatures who don't even have a telephone because they're so stupid, in their country.
Oh, yeah.
And and there's less of them,
Right.
so
Right.
as well we
So
might have
it's
paying them less money to do work that we wouldn't do for less than $20 an hour because it would make more people live a better life.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Like you can justify utilitarianism that ignores people who are easier to ignore
Right. Yeah.
if you're not careful.
Yes. You could say Jim Crow laws were utilitarianism because it had,
Well,
although,
that's true. Hedonic utilitarianism might dictate that you're not going to care as much about that person suffering over there because you don't
right.
feel it as much. So we'd
Yeah.
have to kind of add like informed and involved hedonic utilitarianism or some shit, you know?
Which in the end, I believe more people happy and not forced to do things they don't want to do is
Mhm.
probably a better way. But that's just me
Yeah.
thinking at the time. It would be this isn't going to be good if we have all these people who are probably angry at us and also needing food and shelter, to be
Right.
free to do whatever they want because it's
Hey,
going to screw the thing. All right.
oh, I hate to take up your time with an actual gotcha question, but since we're talking about cutting off babies' feet,
Mhm.
I'm going to mention abortion.
All right.
Abortion.
Abortion.
Yep. So you mentioned it too. So apparently you're not afraid to mention abortion.
No, and I'll have to preface that with a quote from that silly, the funny lady in her TV show when she said, "What's her name? She's Jewish. She's got dark hair. She's real
Oh,
pretty."
she dressed up as yeah, Sarah
Sarah Silver.
Silverman. Yeah.
She, she said, "Oh, that's my abortion guy."
Oh, yeah, that's right. So she thinks it's okay to joke with.
Yeah, right.
Um,
Anyway, your thing.
yeah, I guess what I would say is not to ask you whether you think abortion should be allowed, but do you think there are decisive factors? Do you think it's an easy decision to
Nope.
ah ah ah?
I think mostly it's also split for me because it's not fair to tell a woman what she could do with her life, and that's just from personal experience. I had a very close friend tell me she needed an abortion, and I was against it because I thought, well, it's gonna be a life, in
Mm-hmm,
my.
mm-hmm,
But I
mm-hmm.
was like, I can't sit her, she's going through all this stuff, and
Right,
we were like
right,
19
right.
or 20 at the
Yeah,
time, and
yeah.
like not she probably could have, but it would have been just a hard life to be a single woman in 1990 or whatever it was, to try to raise a child. So in my mind, I was like,
Right.
I didn't even start the argument with her. I was like, I can't do it. So that kind of settled it for me. Like, well, that's how I feel.
That's kind of what happened to me, a personal experience. And I know that that's not abject logic, but like I said, there is never logic removed completely from emotion. That's not how it works. Even the feeling of something clicking logically for you is a feeling. It's
Yeah.
mediated
Right.
by internal sensory, what we call interoception, is
Yeah.
my current thought of the construction of emotions. And I feel the same way. I had a friend who we would rail against other people who had abortions. She was female and still is, and I am male. And we
Right.
would say, yeah, no, it's wrong. It's a life. It's going to be a life. It was a life at conception. All these things. And then one day she called me and said, my boyfriend won't go to the clinic with me, and I'm pregnant. And
Yeah.
will you go with me? And it was like, of course. And it was the same reason you gave. So
Yeah.
that doesn't mean we're right, but
Right.
I believe that misery versus happiness is an important calculation.
Right.
All right.
Yeah. Makes sense.
All right. And Joe will be appearing where this weekend?
This weekend, starting Thursday, I'll be at the Palladium Theater for a Christmas show with Nate Najar's band. Friday, I will be at a private party in Tampa. Saturday is December what? December 10th. I will be performing with the band. No, that'll be the Christmas show. December 8th is the same band as Jazz Show, and I believe they're both at the Palladium Theater in St. Pete.
Woohoo! All right. And me, I'll
Yeah.
be in Northwest Gainesville doing counseling on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays this week. All right.
Catch them can. Tickets
Catch
are
me.
going fast.
All right. Take care of yourself.
Be cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I will be. You be cool too.
I will.